Function notation, I don't want to spend too much time on it here. It's something that probably should be left to grade 11, I think, to introduce, but it is here. You have to understand how to read it and stuff like that. All it is if you have this is just at the bottom of this first page of this. In the textbook, you can likely find either in the glossary, look it up and find where it is in the textbook if you want some more. But all it is let's say we had a rule for a function that was 2x plus 1, where y is related to x. Y is related to x. Sometimes what people will do is they'll name this rule, right? This rule, if you wrote it out with words, would be multiply by 2, then add 1, right? They like to give a name to that. Sometimes they give a name to this, and mathematicians like to give names that are just single letters, right? Like variables. So they might say this rule is called f for function, right? Or g or h. They seem to use those letters a lot, but you can use any letter if you want. You might name this function f, okay? Let's say call this function f. So then what they might say is instead of writing this all out, like take the x, multiply by 2, add the 1, what they might say is if we want to talk about that function but we don't really care what it is, we're just going to say f applied to x. What this means when you put an f in brackets x, it means you say f of x. Okay? It means take the x and apply this rule to it. That's what this notation means. All right? So you might say y equals f of x, and f of x is that particular rule. Okay? All it is giving a name, giving a letter. Up till now, you've had letters representing numbers. Remember when you first learned that a letter could represent a number, and somebody said 3x, and you said, I don't know what that means. If x is 2, what is this equal to? You put the 2 in there, 3 times 2 is 6, right? When you first learned that, kids think, well, what is it, like 32? Do I just put it there? You had maybe a hard time realizing that represented a number. Here, a letter is going to represent a whole bunch of stuff, right? It represents a bunch of operations and numbers and things here, right? If you wanted to, you could say here in this case, f equals 2x plus 1, right? That's what that is. Or you could say f of x. This function is 2x plus 1. This f, with the brackets, stands for timesing by 2 and adding 1. That's what it stands for, right? The reason people do this, one reason, is because then they can write things like this. If you have something like this, y equals 2x plus 1, you can... Number one, calling this f of x instead of just y equals. Calling it f of x and saying f of x, it's saying this rule applied to x gives you that. If somebody wanted the y value or the function value, when x was a certain thing, you'd have to say something like find the function value when x is something, when x equals 3. You can use this as kind of a shorthand. You can just say find f of 3. What that means is find the value of the function. It means exactly this. It means find the value of the function when x is 3. 3 is inside there. Question? All right. In grade 10, we're not going to do much more with function notation than understand that it's a shorthand for something. If you had some really complicated function that you were working with, like let's say you had your function was going to be take an x value, square it, times it by 3, add it to 5 times the x value, plus the square root of 2x minus 5 plus 7. You could say that you could say this rule, that whole big rule, all that stuff, we're just going to call it f of x. Because then what we can say sometimes is just, if you want to know what this is equal to, when x is 3 or something like that, you can just say find f of 3. It means if someone says find f of 3, it means take the 3 and put it in there and work out what the rule gives you when x is 3. If you wanted to work out what that is, you'd have to go 3 times, put the 3 in there, 5 times, put the 3 in there, plus 2 times, put the 3 there as well, minus 5 plus 7. We're obviously not going to work with functions that are that complicated, but that's what it would be, putting the 3 in for the x. If somebody says, what's f of negative 1? It's exactly the same thing, but you put a negative 1 in there. If somebody says, what is f of p? They put something else in there. 3 times p squared plus 5 times p plus square root of that. Whatever's there, whatever is here, you sub in place. Okay? That function means take whatever's here and do all those operations to it. Okay? That's what function notation is. It's a shorthand for whatever rules you happen to be working with, whatever function you happen to be working with. Are we okay with that? That's more or less it for now. You're just going to have to get comfortable with it. If somebody says, here's an example. If somebody says, if f of x equals 3x minus 2, find each of these things. You should write this down somewhere right now. Maybe in the big blank space you have somewhere beside that in your book, or if you're writing things down. Find f of 4. That's one thing. Okay? And then the second thing I want you to find is find x when f of x equals, what could it be? 10? No, that's no good. 22? If f of x equals that, this is saying if a rule that you're going to apply to x is equal to this. So in other words, it's saying if this particular rule is multiply by 3 and subtract 2, then tell me what you get when you make x into 4. What do you get? If you want to work it out, you sub that in for the x. You put it in for x. So basically write the rule out, but instead of x now, just put what it's equal to here, right? Sub that in for that. Put a 4 in there, what does it equal? 10, right? F of 4 equals 10. This is basically just saying, what's the y value when x is 4, right? Because I could have asked you the same question by putting here, if y equals 3x minus 2, find y when x equals 4. We could have done that. But this is what function notation is. It just makes things a little quicker to say and emphasizes that it's a function. The second one here says, find x when f of x is 22. What you can do there is write the rule out. F of x equals 3x minus 2. But then if it says if f of x is 22, instead of f of x here, what can I write instead of f of x? That f of x, that thing in green there, what does it say it's equal to? 22. Don't put 22 in for x. Put 22 in for f of x. Put it over there, right? You can put 22 in over there, and you can write the rule out. 3x minus 2. And what do you get for that? How do you figure out that? You're good at solving these equations by now, right? After grade 8 and 9. Add 2 to both sides, you get 24 is 3x. Divide by 3 on both sides, you get 8. X is 8. That's probably the limit of what we're going to do with function notation. All right? Are we sort of okay with that? Yes, no, maybe?